The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
Hey, it's episode number 158, and it is 119 days till the man burns. As of this particular recording, actually, it might be like 116 days. I don't know, it took me a while to get to this. This past Burning Man, I attended some woo-woo workshop on a dusty Wednesday, and at some point, amidst the ecstatic dancing and downward dogging, the facilitator encouraged us to make our demands of the universe. Say it out loud, he said, when asking for what we want specifically and directly. He encouraged us to cap it off with, show me that you know me. Like saying that to the universe. To look for evidence, that is, in a manner that exhibits how the universe knows us better than we know ourselves. We don't exactly get what we ask for all of the time, but the essence of what we're asking, what we're attracting, or something even better often has the capacity to manifest into our experience. And I experience that pretty often with this show. I journal about the topics I'm interested in, and then at some point, some variation of it shows up in the form of my interview subjects. It's a little bit like that manifestation game that we like to play on Playa. We do reference it in today's chat, actually. It does come up, coincidentally. Tyler Williams is the subject of today's interview. The spectacular, the amazing Mr. Tyler Williams. Tyler did his first 6 burns, first 6 trips home, the millionaire way. Millionaire way, billionaire way. People switch that up a lot. By flying, is millionaire just not big enough anymore? People say billionaire. The billionaire way, by flying in on a private jet with his camp and costumes and shit already all set up and laid out. And he basically weekend warriored and sparkle ponied up the whole thing. And then getting the fuck out of Dodge before the temple burn. That was his first 6 years before, you know, all the feelings and shit that you got to deal with. And then Tyler returned to Black Rock City for his 7th year. And he did it all totally sober. From pre-gate build all the way through the bittersweet post-temple burn end. He did the whole thing. He did it, quote-unquote, right, as our friends might say. I'd been looking for a way for a while now. That's where the whole manifestation blah, blah, blah came from. I've been looking for a while to tell the Burning Man story from the vantage point of K Street, which I think, if you're a real Burning Man geek, we can generally agree K Street is like the closest thing we have to a gated community in Black Rock City. It's like the like the Palo Alto tech bro side of Burning Man, if you will. I'm using all the cliches. I'm not saying everybody's that and everybody's had the experience. It's just, general stories that exist out there. Point being, because, like it or not, and I'm talking to you burnier than thou types, the millionaires and the billionaires, they are still Black Rock City citizens. And they are very much still a part of our culture. They're very much a part of Burning Man, whether we all agree on how we're supposed to burn or not. And Tyler is most certainly not that, but he got to experience Burning Man in that way, which I think makes him such a compelling protagonist for a story about that side of the Burning Man experience. Tyler is much more of an everyman. He's very open and very candid about all of his experiences. Tyler and his high school sweetheart, Elisa, made their way to Vegas, and he was a musician kind of getting by. Then he gets thrust into the weirder, wilder world of one Mr. Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, author of Delivering Happiness, thought leader whom is objectively, subjectively credited with being a major contributor, possibly the entire contributor to today's ideas of office and work culture that we see happening in tech in Silicon Valley, and how much of that is leaked over to other arenas. We'll follow Tyler through his childhood in a traditional conservative Christian upbringing in Oregon and in Alaska before he makes his way to Las Vegas with his band, where he ends up working at Zappos and eventually more directly with and for Tony, and Tony brings him to Burning Man. And that kicks off a chapter of 6 years of burns, with one of the world's most famous tech leaders. We talk about what that experience was like, what it's like to be that close to someone playing at that level of power and money, how folks like that get, insulated. That's part of the conversation. It's a topic I've always been particularly fascinated by myself, so it was really nice to get into that. And how they used to escape Black Rock City when he was going with Tony every year before the temple burn. And that is until Tony passes away and Tyler goes back to do it again, this time to do it totally sober and with full intentionality. And staying for the temple burn this time. Really staying for all of the feelings. So Tyler is kind of our, our Nick Carraway to Tony Hsieh's Gatsby. It's a hell of a story. Along the way, Tyler and I chat about various manifestations of artist consciousness and music, and we'll take the various side excursions you love about this show. Actually, I don't know. Maybe you fucking hate them. Anyway, you'll love Tyler. He's very engaging, and of course, I think very highly of him. Just a solid dude who is legitimately interested in contributing goodness to the world. A major plot point we will get into is ketamine. Tyler had front row seats and is totally transparent about his observations and his opinions on the role of ketamine in Tony Hsieh's life towards the end, which is just a scary thought. So yeah, wealth, power, insulation, the importance of grounding and community. These are the topics that we poke at as we follow Tyler's own incredible, satisfying hero's journey. That's today's show. And I gotta say, it is one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done. It is a solid memoir with a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm really eager to share it with you. So today's episode is entitled, Welcome Home. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There were sands and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
They're not even beating around the bush. All right, I'm recording. I love it. I don't have to give you any directions on the mic. So the name of this organization is Inspiring Children Foundation.
Yeah.
So tell me about it. Is it more localized? Are they national?
It's local. It's headquartered here in Las Vegas. It's actually called the Marty Hennessy Inspiring Children's Foundation.
Mm.
And it started around tennis.
Yeah.
So they really use tennis and sports, and they just have an amazing curriculum. They call it the whole human curriculum that they teach these young people. And again, there's one of their kids who's now an adult,
Right.
named Cheryl. She was on her third attempt at suicide. And the foundation founder, his name's Ryan Wolfington, went to the hospital, pulled her out of that, and they have a 97% success rate on eliminating suicidal ideation amongst teenagers. Like, it's insane what they do.
Yeah. So you just, this for the listeners that are tuning in now, this started because you were showing me this game. So tell me, it's the Meaningful Conversations card game.
Yeah, there's 4 decks in there, decks of cards, and on the cards you have a question.
Wow.
And so you sit around with a group or just 2 people, and you read the question. If you're comfortable answering it, you answer it. You can skip it if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And the job of the other person is to listen with empathy and be active in listening. And they were just doing this. They had these decks of cards on these retreats that they would take executives, and we went on one. The Zappos executive team went on one. And they had us crying on the beach, asking questions about what our greatest fears were. And so they made it into a product. And it's not out yet. I went and picked it up at their headquarters here in Las Vegas. It's because I had a workshop that I wanted to use it at. And they finally made it into a product. So they'll help raise funds for their foundation.
That's really brilliant. Yeah, we were chatting about this before we started recording. And the thought that hit me was just about how, like, I think, like, by its very definition, if you are considering ending your own existence, that is a symptom of having gone pretty deep in the thought process, right? And, like, I may have gone to a dark place. I spent, like, the first third of my life casually, daily suicidal. So it's like and it still comes back from time to time. Like the grooves are still in the brain. So it's an interesting subject to me. And like now, I think like a lot of it is like it has, it has so much pressure and stigma around it from people who don't understand it. But I think a lot of it is because it's hard to connect with like how deep down the rabbit hole one has gone in their own mind to even be in a position to consider the possibility of ending existence.
Yeah, I think more and more I find myself talking to people about that. I mean, this foundation has taught me a lot about just talking openly and honestly with friends, with family, with people that you love and care about, or just complete strangers about what's actually going on in your mind, like the truth behind what's going on. And more people have these thoughts than I actually think don't. I think that it's something that there's more information out there now that's just constantly entering into people's psyche. I also think that things like social media have really turned up the amount of comparison culture that's just young people can't help it. It's in our nature to compare ourselves to what we see and to think that spend our lives feeling like we're a failure. One of the things that this foundation says to young people, which when I first heard it, I was like, how could you even tell that to a kid? But they say, kill your dreams. They tell the kids, like, kill your dreams.
Okay.
Because people will tell you can be anything. You could be the next Michael Jordan. You could be the next Serena or Venus Williams because they do tennis.
Yeah.
No. What you can be is the best version of yourself and show up grateful and with contentment in who you are and loving yourself. And that's the best thing that you could possibly be. And it sounds counterintuitive to tell a young person, like, kill your dreams, but it's kill the dreams of being something that's not who you are. And dream about being that person,
Yeah.
And that's wisdom,
Yeah, that's sparking a flurry of thoughts.
Because it's kind of controversial.
It is, yeah. The first thing that's kind of popping up is I've recently become like a big fan of this phrase I discovered. I think it was like coined in like the MIT Design Lab, where they say compasses over maps.
Yeah.
And like the meaning of that sort of being that, we all have a direction that we're moving towards. But if we get too obsessed with the map, we get rigid because the map has already been drawn and it was drawn by somebody else. So it may not be it almost certainly is not an accurate representation of what my journey is or your journey is going to be, because we might walk through different grooves. We might find different paths. There might be a rainstorm as we're crossing a certain passage, and now that particular terrain is not walkable the way it was for the previous person who drew the map.
Yeah.
So people, we can share with each other our compasses and like share like, oh yeah, you can go in this general direction. Like you can be, for lack of a better description, a tennis star, you know, quote unquote, right? But like you can't be Serena Williams. You can't be, because like whatever direction they took isn't going to be your direction. There's 10 trillion things that were different for them. Mm-hmm. The world is going to change. Maybe tennis stars won't be a thing anymore, you know, like all these different things.
Yeah. I mean, just like terrain evolves, you know, the entire planet and world evolves. Yeah. I grew up in feeling like I was a failure in music because I didn't have an MTV crib and didn't have a CD that sold platinum records. Yeah. But I was able to go on tour with my best friends for years at a time and make a living doing music. And it's funny how you can do that. You can write and record songs and have multiple albums and still feel like you never made it as a musician. And it's just that comparison to you see the top 1.001% of success, and there's so much of just putting yourself out there, creating music, creating art. And you know, I'm sure people who do podcasts like this probably look at the top podcasts in the world and say, man, if only. But just do it. I mean, I like what I think it was, I forget who said this, it was a producer, but he said, you've already achieved the greatest success as an artist as soon as you put your art out into the world. Yeah. No matter what happens with it. As soon as you've done it, you've already done the greatest thing that you can do as an artist, is you've put it out there. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And it, because that alone, I mean, it's completely massive. I mean, for example, like, and tell me if this like resonates with your experience. I have a ton of shit that I've put out into the world, and I'm still fixated on the stuff that I haven't.
Oh yeah. And I think a lot of artists have a ton of stuff that we're our own worst critics, I think, always. And we have a ton of stuff that we sit on that's ready that we don't think's ready. Yeah. And we got to redo it and re-record it. I have hundreds of recordings that they're the recordings leading up to the recording of, okay, now I got to do it the perfect way. And then I'm sure when I do it, I'll sit on it and go, we got to re-record that because we got to do it different. Or there's a new plug-in out that's going to make my drums sound better. You know, it's just...
How do you know it's done?
I don't think you ever really know it's done. Yeah. You know, you're constantly wanting it to get better and improve. And I think that's just kind of a metaphor for life too.
Sure.
You're constantly striving for more. It's in our nature. I don't know too many people that don't have ambition to get better or grow or achieve more in life.
I think chances are you just don't hang out much with those people.
Yeah.
Because they're out there.
Yeah, I'm sure they're out there.
I think chances are high that if you are listening to something like this, you're probably the kind of person who is interested and curious about what's not the norm. How can you push past her? And I think like even within our community, you know, burners, like it's people living at the bleeding edge of reality. And the things, I mean, we may have talked about this before, like the things that are happening in the burner community, the things that happen at Burning Man eventually leak their way out into the default world.
My first experience with Burning Man, I got invited by Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, and I knew what Burning Man was, but growing up Pentecostal Christian, I was kind of told it's like a bunch of devil worshippers just doing drugs and having sex out in the desert, and
so you discovered all that was true.
Kind of, yeah. But I had this this thing of like, this is a really bad thing that happened out there. But that was when I was growing up, and I was now in my 30s. I didn't feel that necessarily because I had been to a lot of festivals and raves, and I had been exposed to the culture, and kind of Burning Man was this, I would say in my mind, it was like the pinnacle of those things. It was like the ultimate festival that at some point you need to go to. And I got what people would call the golden ticket. You know, I got invited by a billionaire who we were just really becoming friends at the time. And, you know, with him, you fly in on a private plane, you get picked up by an art car, you get taken to this camp, you get assigned an RV, you have a welcome kit that has everything that you would need. You have a bike, you know, that's already like designed, like totally decked out in lights and all this stuff. I could have just came with a t-shirt and jeans and had everything I need. There's a center tent with snacks and food and drinks and on ice, and you get fed twice a day, at 11 and at 7. And the whole camp is got porters, have people that serve you food, and so that was my initial, like, got brought to Burning Man in this crazy capacity, I would say. And it's not the way I don't think that's the normal way that people experience Burning Man. But I was grateful to be there and excited to experience it. And, you know, the day we just kind of hung out at camp, it felt like I just didn't know anything that was going on. And then at night we all go out, and there was this platform that was probably a 30-foot tall staircase that just led to a viewing platform. It was on the promenade. And you get up on there and you just look out over the playa. And I looked out, and as far as I could see was like a gypsy neon flame circus festival of, like, I couldn't even believe it, what was going on. I'm trying to process. And then it's like, this is the modern Louvre. This is, everybody here is pushing the boundaries of merging music, technology, art, play, pranking culture. I mean, you name it, it's on the very edge, and they're all trying to one-up each other. There's no doubt. It's like everybody's trying to come up with the most radical, exciting, engaging, never before seen idea. I mean, it's the first time I knew you could, like, inject chemicals into fire and make purple and blue and pink and green fire just shooting out of a dragon's mouth, you know? It's like hundreds of feet into the air. Yeah. I couldn't believe it, and I think that the first year and the last year were my favorite years at Burning Man.
I want to... Yeah, so I know, and I knew before coming into today's conversation that, like, your first year and your last year are going to be, like, important chapters in the story. So I want to come back to your first year, but first I want to get kind of a background of where you were in life prior to that. What was going on in your life in like, let's say, the years, like, building up to it? Where were you raised? How did you end up meeting Tony?
Yeah. So I grew up in Grants Pass, Oregon, a town, 37,000 people. It probably has more people now, but in Southern Oregon, till I was 12, my dad was a pastor of Pentecostal church. He was a youth pastor. I loved my childhood and church and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun because we went to camps, and, you know, it's music, it's community. And then when I was 12, my mom kind of gave my dad an ultimatum of, like, we're so poor, like, you're a pastor, you know, we got to figure out something else to do. So we moved to Alaska when I was 12, which really disrupted my whole life. And my dad became a surveyor for the Army Corps of Engineers, and he'd travel all over Alaska and survey. Wow. And They still did ministry. They started a home for medically fragile Native children. So I have 7 little brothers and sisters, all adopted, all Alaska Natives, all with different variations of, medical needs and disabilities that I think I'm really grateful my parents did that too, because it taught me a lot, having these kids and little brothers and sisters in my life. And then when I was 19, I went on the road, heavy metal band with I was in a really big band in Alaska. We were the biggest band in Alaska. We were called Ex Nihilo, heavy metal. And we were kind of quasi like Christian heavy metal. We were trying to be like POD, kind of that style, but like really straight edge kids, no drinking, no drugs. And we had saved up enough money as a band. We went on the road, ended up in San Diego. I'd ran out of money and realized in Alaska, we were a very big fish in a small pond. Yeah. And I remember we opened up for this band, in San Diego when we first got there, and we were like, oh my God, we need a woodshed and practice, because these bands down here are on another level. It's about how you measure up to your competition,
Well, you came to POD's hometown.
We did. And we realized, we had some work to do. Anyway, kind of milled around in that band in Southern California, Orange County, and then I moved back to Alaska to marry my now wife. We were high school sweethearts, and we were doing a long distance thing, and she graduated college. And so I put the band thing aside for a minute, and my default to make money was I was in construction. So I was a painter, drywaller, kind of, carpenter. And I got the call to have this massive job in Washington to redo all the houses on Bangor Navy Base down in like the Port Arthur, Washington area. And then I ended up joining a band again. I got a call by an old guy I used to do music with in Vegas to come join a band in Vegas. They had got signed. They were called Theory of Flight, and it was pop rock. You know, like think The Fray, Lifehouse, Train, which were all people we opened up for in Theory of Flight. And this is kind of the same time that Imagine Dragons was blowing up in Vegas, so we would play with them quite a bit. And that band, we got signed by EMI, and we went on the road for 2 years. And we're on the road in Colorado eating pizza. We check our bank account, and we're like got $80 left in the bank account. So we're like, where's our tour draw? We're supposed to have money. And turns out EMI merged with Universal, and they just kind of recommended go back to Vegas and build a fan base. But they owned our record they owned our masters of our record for 10 years. And we just came back heartbroken, lost a little bit. And my wife was a Monster Energy girl. So she worked 3 jobs to support her musician husband.
Wow.
And
that's commitment.
And one of them was she passed out Monster Energy drinks. And she passed out Monsters to this place called Zappos. And she's like, you got to just go online and check out this company, because she knew I couldn't have a traditional job. I'm just not wired to do that. She's like, I think that you would really be interested in this company, because it's like they're partying all day long, every day. Her exact words were, it's like an adult daycare that I feel I could drop you off at and be comfortable, that you would like stay out of trouble. Yeah. Oh, little did she know.
Oh my God.
And so I did. I got online and I see this Asian guy. I didn't see I couldn't even tell what Zappos did. I didn't know that they sold shoes, because all I saw online was fun videos, like prank videos. I saw this Asian guy that was preaching about core values and employee happiness. And I instantly fell in love with everything that it was about. And so I went and I applied. But when I applied, I saw that it was harder to get into Zappos than to get into Harvard.
Wow.
Because everybody wanted to work there. Yeah. And I barely graduated high school. I never went to college. So my wife was like, yeah, but you're really talented. You should do, you're going to have to know the core values. So like maybe write a song about their 10 core values and send it to them.
Brilliant.
And so I did. So I wrote a song about their 10 core values. I recorded it. I performed it. I did a video. There's like 8 Tylers in the room. I'm playing every instrument, and I sent it in there immediately. Like, yeah, we don't really have a job, but we got to hire you anyway and figure something out. So would you answer phone calls? And I'm like,
yep.
Fuck yeah, sign me up, And so that's the origin story of me coming to Zappos. And I kind of came into Zappos already with this video that had circled around, because it was kind of one of the coolest things that people had done to get into the company. And so I think Tony was like watching me, as the more I learned about him later, he kind of does. He collects interesting people. And so while I didn't become friends with him right away, he would kind of find ways to have a collision with me and bounce maybe a small idea to get my thoughts or put a project on me.
Yeah.
Just knowing that I probably needed to be doing more than answering phones. And that kind of led to, I became the builder of the parade floats. It's like, Tyler can build parade floats. And that turned into, at one point, they sat me down, and their chief of staff, her name was Jamie Naughton. She sat me down and said, hey, what do you want to do? Write a job description, call it whatever you want, and just write down what you want to get paid.
Wow.
And so I wrote the job description, the Fungineer.
Oh my God. Okay.
And I wrote down what I wanted to do, and I wrote down I wanted to get paid $50,000 a year, which to me was like insane money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're gonna tell me to take a flying leap, throw a rolling donut, and they're like, sure, you're the Fungineer, go.
What was the job?
Plan all the company parties and events, and like we constantly, like Halloween costume contests. We had this bald and blue day where we'd all shave our heads and paint Z's on our head. I mean, we were like a crazy cult, And then Valentine's Day, we would have like a horse and carriage and like employee kissing booth and all sorts of wild things. Vendor party, Christmas party. Every excuse we could to just get everybody together as a company and have a good time together. We did it.
I want to I think pretty much everybody knows who Tony Hsieh and Zappos are, but let's say in like 3 or 4 sentences for the listeners uninitiated, how big is Zappos at this time? How long ago did Tony found it and became a billionaire, I guess?
I joined Zappos in 2011, and Zappos started in 1999, so it already had been a company for like 11 or 12 years.
Okay.
Tony was already famous.
Yeah.
He kind of Zappos had become like the love child of the internet, like the darling, and Tony was the darling CEO that core values, treat your company right, treat your employees right, and get the culture right, and everything else takes care of itself. We sold shoes online. That was our business.
Right.
At the time, we kind of sold a lot of other stuff like home goods and electronics. We were kind of trying to reach into the realm of Amazon a little bit, which ended up Amazon bought Zappos. But at the time, Zappos did about $3 billion a year in sales. And we got bought by, like, right when I came on the scene, Tony had written a book called Delivering Happiness, which became like a #1 bestseller. He had done his Delivering Happiness tour, and inside of the company, everybody's like, "Oh, there's Tony Hsieh. Oh, there's Tony Hsieh." He was revered. People loved him, and the entire company had an immense amount of respect and love for him.
How old was he at that time?
So, 47's when he passed away. So I'd say he was probably like late 30s, like 37-ish, 38.
So you guys were in the same generation.
I'm 10 years younger than him, but I think I'm a millennial.
Okay.
But I think I'm in that lost generation period that they call, like, it's like a little weird section that these 1983.
Yeah. That's me. I was born in 82.
82. Yeah. So he was 10 years older than I was.
Yeah.
But I really did have a lot of respect for him and what he had created. And I really looked up to him as like, he's figured it out. You know, he's got a company that loves him. He's built this incredible culture and group, and the business was super successful.
Right. And it was from it was almost like, from what you're describing, the product was secondary to the culture.
The product, as it was defined to all the employees, was that we were a service company that just happened to sell stuff.
Right.
So really, we were about being the very, very best in customer service. And so everything was centered around that. And the belief was you can deliver wow was our highest outcome. If you could make somebody say wow.
Yeah.
And you could deliver wow to your employees, your customers, your shareholders, and your community, and your vendors. All. You don't have to like sacrifice one for the happiness of another. We really believe that you could have your cake and eat it too. You could actually treat everybody really, really well, and with that, it's going to come back to you.
Wow. Yeah. I just said wow.
Yeah. No, it really was. I mean, the company was incredible, and it still is incredible. And you know, Amazon got a great buy with Zappos.
Yeah.
And they continue to. They're out there still cranking.
Yeah.
But Tony was a big piece. I mean, Zappos rode the wave of him and his impact in the world and the community.
Yeah, it's like you know, certainly not the intention not to only talk about Tony a lot in this interview, but he's like touched so many people's lives directly that I'm personally experiencing.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I obviously never met him, but like my housemate and I were talking about how like we've never known somebody who is spoken of with such reverence by as many people as we personally know. Like it comes up regularly in conversations. I know so many people who either directly or indirectly attribute their experiences and elevating in life to him. I can say even like me personally, I've been, you know, I moved here to Vegas about like 5-6 months ago, and I've been looking around and realizing I wouldn't have ended up here if it wasn't because of what Tony was doing with the culture here, with what he was doing in downtown Vegas, and you know, almost like bringing a lot of that burner ethos like in here to the default. If it wasn't for what he'd done, it was the domino effect. I would not be here right now.
I mean, I everywhere I go, it seems to it seems to come up in conversation that somebody either knows him or is connected to him or has a personal experience related to him. And yeah, in a nutshell, he was trying to bring an urban version of Burning Man to downtown Las Vegas.
Yeah.
To a blighted, disadvantaged community that was poor and unsafe. I mean, he decided to move his suburban call center company to, you know, so I actually, one of my first experiences of downtown Fremont, other than being in a band and playing down at the Beauty Bar and Jillian's at Neonopolis a few times, it was an area you didn't go. Yeah. Like you just didn't, and I'm a 215 pound, 6'1" bearded guy, you know?
Yeah.
And would not cross 6th Street. And when I first, like, again, I was just kind of getting to know Tony. I was helping out with a random side project. I was helping move a trailer in downtown with his bus driver, Steve-O, this guy named Steve-O. And there was a Hell's Angel guy there that was like the tow truck guy. And he goes, can I ask you something? And he's like, what the fuck are you guys doing down here? And I was like, I don't know. We're moving our company down here. You know, we're doing stuff. And he goes, this is the armpit of hell. He goes, I'm a Hell's Angel. And I'll let you know, like, he goes, but you know what? And Tony walks by, like his backpack, looking at his phone, texting on his phone. He goes, we love that guy. And he's as safe as he can possibly be. And he points at him. Wow. And he goes, it's really cool what you guys are doing. But you know what? Like, watch yourself. This is a dangerous area. And I remember just like, oh my gosh, like I had never had experience with somebody from the Hell's Angel, but it was just one of those stories of he took a big risk, and I mean the balls on that guy to just move your whole company, 2,000 employees, into the old city hall and take the windfall from the Amazon sale, $350 million of your own money, and just roll it out into a community as quickly and as fast as he did.
God, there's so many liability fears that I would have in that position.
Oh
my God. Like what? Like it's. I mean, it obviously it worked out in so many amazing ways, right? But like,
and didn't in so many unamazing ways, you know.
Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, I mean,
because I can tell you this, like just as a side story, and the way this connects, of course, for burners and stuff too. Like there's a lot of older school burners, for example, who look at Black Rock City, who look at like the evolution of the culture, and like they're like pretty frustrated by how every year there's more rules and more structure. Yeah. And it seems like that's kind of like, to me, that's the inevitable next step, because now, like the org, for example, they're responsible for more and more people's safety than they were last year.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And lawsuits happen, and you fuck up one thing, your government permit gets pulled. And this is why the bigger that we get, the more risk averse we get. And what you're describing is, it's just such a massive fucking risk.
I mean, I couldn't imagine being his lawyer. Yeah, I mean, I think it is inevitable. I think of we started studying cities a lot because Tony read this book, which means I read this book too. But it's called Triumph of the City.
Okay.
And it's by Edward Glaeser, who in that book there's a specific statistic that says every time the size of a company doubles, innovation, creativity, and productivity decreases by 15%.
Yeah.
Every time the size of a city doubles, innovation, creativity, and productivity increases by 15%.
Oh, interesting.
And so he started thinking, well, okay, and also the default, if you read Good to Great and How the Mighty Fall, there are these two books that talk about all the great companies, like look at Best Buy, Circuit City, like Blockbuster, you can name, and if you look back in all the top 100, like Fortune 100 companies in the 50s are no longer around. So why do companies die? Even governments come and go, governance systems, companies, but cities stand the test of time. And the real reason when you look at what a city is a city is a wealth creator. It's a place in which human beings like come together to do commerce, and there's a shared value system. So there's a shared value system, and then that creates a governance system. But that governance system, there's too many things going on. It's a complex, adaptive system that really reacts to the market in real time. So how can we make our company be more like a city? And that's what he really became obsessed with in his like kind of final chapter of Tony's career at Zappos. He was trying to move Zappos from a top-down hierarchical system into a flat management system, more like how cities are ran.
Yeah.
And to go back to your question of like, is it inevitable that these things, when we started looking at neighborhoods do this. They have their moment in time where it's like, this is the place everybody wants to be. So you would argue right now for Vegas, our arts district is having its moment.
My Uber driver in Brooklyn described it as the crescendo. Every city has that crescendo. Yeah.
And it'll have its, its fall. Because the artists came into the arts district. They painted every wall. They made it gritty. They made it cool. They made cool bars and restaurants and that culture. And then everybody wants to be a part of it. So they jump in. And then the money comes in and they build mid-rise mixed use. They drive the rents up. The artists can no longer be there. The artists and the cool people and the cool kids leave. They go take down another place in the desert. paint every wall, make it cool, make everybody want to be there, and the money comes in and ruins it. And so festivals are that way, neighborhoods are that way, but at least there's enough like different districts and cities where it can move around.
Yeah.
And like the uptown estates, the gated communities, just wait. 30 years, it's not going to be the place anybody wants to live. They're going to have to rethink it.
I apologize to listeners who've heard me use this example way too many times, but at the Black Rock City, I think you watch, and it's interesting about specifically Black Rock City as compared to any other happening that happens in the world that we know of. We watch that happen in a matter of a week.
Yeah.
Like at first it's like more a rough and tumble crowd. DPW's there to build some shit.
Yeah.
They're like, shut the fuck up, get out of my way, I'm building shit. And then like you get more of like the artists and like the early adopters, like really the people that make it
cool.
amazing. Yeah.
Make it cool, yeah.
And then by the end of the week,
The billionaires fly in and ruin the whole thing. Here comes Tyler in his plane for the first time ever. Yeah. Walks in his welcome kit in his trailer,
What a perfect transition. Like how, so were you aware of Burning Man prior to Tony introducing it to you? How did
Yes.
that-
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I had heard about it and I knew roughly what it was, but nothing could really prepare me for what I encountered when I first saw it. And that first year was just me, mouth hung open, couldn't believe my eyes, like just absorbing. I think my brain was just exploding in the download of what Burning Man really was. You have your preconceived notions or fantasies. It's really strange though, because for some reason no video can capture what Burning Man does. Like I can watch videos of a crazy festival and a drone flies through and it's really like you can kind of get it, but nothing ever really captures Burning Man for some reason. And so all the videos that you could watch or try to understand, it really can't prepare you for what happens.
That's why we keep going back. And every year I'm like, I'm still shocked. I've been going over a decade now and I'm still like, what the fuck? It's still, and I get out there and I look around and I'm like, I can't believe I almost didn't come. And I can't believe I thought that this was something I could just,
Yeah. Well, and I think Tony really enjoyed his experience with me because we were together almost the entire time. Right. I think we might have had a few times where of the time I was there, I might have slept a total of 3 hours. But of that time, we were together almost the entirety of the time. And I think he got a lot of joy watching me take it in. Because, he knew, he was so good at pegging what somebody's currency was. He knew I'm not a money-motivated person. I kind of don't. I straight up don't like money. I don't like what it does. I don't like how it corrupts. And so he knew, though, I loved experiences. And so he took me on almost like this. He plucked me from Zappos and was like, I'm going to download you with all the coolest shit in the world so that you can bring that back to Zappos. Because I think he really wanted me to level up what I thought when it came to community experiences. Yeah. And so he started just kind of bringing me into his world of, check this out, absorb it. Now, unleash that into Zappos culture the best you can. And I certainly tried.
Is that so? Did he have like a specific conversation with you where he's like, hey, we're going to Burning Man, or like little by little drop that in? Or
no, the way he asked, he said, what does your schedule look like from this date to this date? Was the text. Yeah. And I knew what it meant. Yeah. And I said, wide open. Yeah. And he's like, okay, my assistant will be in touch and give you details.
All right.
So that was kind of his. He didn't really give like. In the end, he did. He started really getting very specific into details. But his real way that he would just like ask your availability, like, what are you doing tonight? The very first conversation I ever had with Tony, kind of a funny story, and it's one of my favorite stories. Is he? I had won the Halloween costume contest at Zappos, and he was in the crowd, and I was a centaur, so I had like a full horse ass following me around on wheels, and it's just over the top. And after I won, he found a way to follow me back to my desk, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And it was awkward because I'm walking, and he's like kind of following me in a weird way. And I was playing a show that night. My country band was playing downtown on Fremont Street, but we were one street over from Fremont Street that was having a Halloween parade. And he goes, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Oh, we have a show on Fremont Street." And he walked away. Didn't say anything. Just walked away. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck, man. I think I just shit the bed and have an opportunity to hang out with the CEO, and he liked my costume. And so that night, our band's playing on this street parallel to Fremont Street, and we have 0 people at our like nobody's where we're at. They're all over on Fremont Street, which is one of the main drags in Vegas. And all of a sudden, our girlfriends and my wife's there, like, good job, guys. We're not feeling good. And around the corner comes a double-decker red bus full of like 40 people, and then a Zappos Escalade with a float of like another 40 people. And they pull up right next to our stage, and they all come down, and they start singing and dancing and like rocking out to our show. Wow. And Tony's like up in the bus, and he comes down, and he's, it's like such a nice thing to do. Like he, I was just a call center agent, in the call center, and he listened, and he's like, "Oh, he's playing a show tonight. I'm going to bring everybody down there." Wow. And so they had been in the parade, and then they drove over to where we were, and those are the type of things I think that make you go from I respect this guy to like I love this person. Yeah. It's a really kind thing to do. And there's just 100 stories of how he would do things like that for people, just focused on making people feel good, making people feel important, making people feel connected. And so that's just who he was.
Yeah. And he understood that, like, I don't know. The first thing that kind of comes up for me is that I feel like a lot of times people won't do things like that because they're afraid that now they're going to be beholden to a certain level of I need to do XYZ. Whereas like you don't like, I mean, if he did that just that one time, I would imagine it still would be something that would touch you forever, and it still would make you feel like, man, I fucking love this person.
Yeah. And when he passed away, I have that story, and I felt really connected to him as both a friend and an employee of his. Oh man, hundreds of people, they would say like, oh man, one time he said he was flying into my city, and he had the bus come by and pick me and my fiance up, and I had met him one time, and then he took us to this cool thing or this restaurant or took us to a show. He just was one of those people that fearlessly would invade your world.
Yeah.
And in such a weird, quirky way that you're like, man, that makes me feel good. Like somebody like him at his level or his caliber would prefer me in that way. And there's so much. I like to say this, there's 97% of my experiences with him were incredibly positive, and then there's 3% that were really rough. And I could say, if I would hope for those numbers with anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good ratio. Take the listeners through the experience of how the billionaire lifestyle works when you're flying into Burning Man.
We would get on the plane in North Las Vegas, like a 6-seater, I'd say, like a prop plane, and we would all sync our watches up.
Okay.
You maybe bring a backpack, but there's a team of people that go ahead of you and set up your camp and get everything prepped. Tony had an assistant that did that, and his driver Steve-O would do that, and they would have everything ready. Mm-hmm. They would bring like U-Hauls up, and you land, you get picked up in an art car, and you get driven to camp. You check in. We would a lot of times meet up. Like the kind of dinner bell and the breakfast bell were the meetup where you'd see a lot of the people. But in Tony's camp, there was a mixture. There was his friends. Mm. There was people he was wanting to show Burning Man to. And then there was kind of like upper echelon, like I'd say other like Tony Hsieh type individuals that were his guests. And those people kind of would usually go out on their own and maybe sync up a couple times with us. But the expectation, at least the way I felt, it was never explicitly spoken about, but it's like, this is Tony's camp. He loves Burning Man, and he's brought his friends, and like, let's try to be with him as much as we can. And so we would go out in big groups. Usually, I always like to be on my bike.
Yeah.
And we would go exploring. And it's all about exploring. And for Tony, a little bit it was shopping too.
Yeah.
You know, he's looking for art that he wants to bring to downtown Vegas too.
Wow.
So we'd go maybe look at an art car, and he's like, maybe, hey, go see who owns that, you know? And like the last one, we were really far down the discussions to buy El Pupo Mecanico.
Yeah.
We were going to buy that one.
Yeah.
Because that was our favorite art car.
Yeah. And then
we loved anything that was over the top with fire.
Right. And then Josh Levine purchased that instead.
Yeah, Josh Levine purchased
mutual
that.
acquaintance.
Yeah, and we knew Josh, and Josh facilitated a lot of the deals. So we had a lot of times meet up with people. We'd go to other people's camps. Like we would go visit another prominent guy in downtown Las Vegas, Ryan Doherty. He has a camp called Prodigal Swans. They free camp, but they're pretty big. I think that they're getting pressure that they should probably register.
Yeah.
But I think he's a renegade and an outlaw, and we'll try to push it as far as he can go.
He's a restaurateur, I want to say.
Yeah, he owns bars and restaurants in downtown.
Yeah, I've met him. Yeah,
and he purchased Forest House art car, which Josh had, and he just did a block party with it Thursday night.
Oh, cool. Yeah. A lot of wildness. All right, we're going to come back to some of these names.
Yeah,
there's a reason we're saying these. So you're how long were you on Playa? Those, like, let's say, what is it, the first 6 years, you said 7 years that you were doing it this way?
Yeah, so I'm trying to get my facts right, but I think that
it can be loose.
We would fly in on like Thursday-ish.
Yeah.
And so we'd be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we never did the temple. We would visit the temple like before, but we never did the burn. We'd fly out the morning of the temple burn. So after the night of like the man burns is Saturday.
Yeah. Why? I mean, I can understand the temple part, feeling like, oh, it's too much heavy spirituality. I don't want to deal with that. But like, why come later in the week? Like, why not get more of the weekend?
And we might have came Tuesday. Might have been Tuesday or Thursday. Again, we didn't sleep much, so it felt like a blur. I think we would come in on Thursday.
Okay.
So we would have...
So you just hit the ground and go extra hard for 4 days.
4 days, yeah. Just nonstop.
Yeah.
And by then, everything's pretty much set up. It's all cooking, you know? And so I never experienced, like, the setup, the days leading up, like the artist building stuff, the helping out, the volunteering. We would get assigned, because you're supposed to give back, we would get assigned, hey, from this time to this time, our camp would give out, our our camp would give out, we make grilled cheeses or quesadillas and give margaritas and coffee and lemonade. And so we had to sign up for shifts. And at first I didn't really know what that meant. It's like, no, you're supposed to give back to, and I learned really quickly when we would roll up to somebody's car and they'd be making gourmet grilled cheeses. And I can tell you that first year, Tony would say, think about something that you want and just manifest it. And I'd say, man, I really want a grilled cheese. And we'd pull up to an art car and they're making grilled cheeses. I thought it was like he was setting up pranks on me. And he's like, no, this is how this place works. Yeah. Like if you have a need or you want something, or it's like, it's here, you know, it's just because everybody's here is it really weirded me out the first time that happened. And then I just was like, okay, that's what Burning Man is about.
Was Tony rich before he started burning, or did he start? Okay.
Yeah, I think he was. I think the first time he took his tour bus there, and it was like, never take your tour bus there ever again.
So that was for the book. So he personally hadn't experienced like the building out part.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. That's interesting.
I think because
he shows up like such a burner in like so many other parts of the world, and then and as you're describing this, it's interesting how it's like flipped. A little bit. Yeah.
I think he came. You know, somebody. I don't know his origin story with Burning Man. I think that he came. I think I remember them saying like the first time he came, he actually camped with the founders. In their big camp.
Right. First camp.
Yeah. First camp. And so he pulled his bus in there, and he immediately was like, this is the coolest thing ever, and fell in love with it. And, you know, because of who he is, you know, he always saw something that he really liked, and he wanted to bring it back. And I think he saw an opportunity in downtown Las Vegas where he could do a lot of things that maybe were in other places you couldn't do it. You could do it in Vegas.
Yeah. It's a weird fucking place in the middle of the desert with a bunch of blinky shit.
You can still get away with a lot. There's still a lot of, you know, the slogan of the city of Las Vegas is down for anything. It's their literal slogan. So now I can tell you out of experience, they are not down for anything. We tried some stuff that they were like, nope. I remember Tony getting in Tony and the mayor, Mayor Goodman. She was our mayor for a long time. They had a fantastic relationship. So one time he went to, I think we went to Oklahoma City, and we rode scooters around, those bird scooters. And he came back, was like, we got to get bird scooters in downtown. And Mayor Goodman was like, no. And then she gave us this really good reason that we could not argue with. She's like, look, everybody's down here getting wasted. You want to add electric scooters that go 30 miles an hour to Fremont Street? Are you crazy? We're like, okay, good point.
Legit argument. I can definitely report that absolutely sober people have smashed themselves up
for sure.
With that.
Not a good idea. I mean, I my last few years at Burning Man, even the electric bikes, man. The electric bikes are. I have one. Don't get me wrong, and I use it, but I mean, people are. Wow.
No, we're struggling with the culture on that one because like the roads were fucked up on this last one. You know? And a lot of folks are not psyched about it. But then the people who have it were like, man, you get to see so much more of Burning Man. You know, it's
no longer a trek to go across the playa. Now it's you can be across there in no time flat.
That by the way. So that's an interesting topic because that is one that I wanted to explore with you about is it just human beings? Is it our capitalist mental programming? How do we stop going upwards? You know, like how do we stop getting bigger? Like now we have this, it's almost like this new drug has been introduced, right? Like now that I've tried it, I can't like not do it because it's like better than the last one. You know, like that like the scooters and the e-bikes, we can I think that we could sit here and successfully argue that it is a superior experience to slow down and like get lost in individual situations. But you get on that fucking e-bike and you can get on the other side of playa and see things you would have never seen. How do you, like, even like Burning Man, like, how do you stop growing? How do you stop one-upping last year? Because a lot of what you were describing, the way Burning Man's awesomeness even is, like our culture in general, people are competing with each other, you know, playfully. Like, I'm going to outdo this other Tesla coil. I'm going to outdo this other flame art, you know?
And the art cars now, holy shit.
Yeah, it's like, nuts.
Oh, this is a $30 million art car.
Yeah.
Okay, must be nice. Like,
yeah. I was looking at the Dragon, one of the many Dragon art cars, I guess. The camp was called Dragon's Lair. And we were there checking out, like, I was like looking at the cords, the power cords, and it's just, it looks like it's manufactured in like top industry, top factory situations. And I'm just thinking, just a few years ago, I'd look around at art cars and it's like barely duct taped together.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And like now it looks like they came straight off the Tesla factory line.
I don't think that you can stop people from moving upward. I think, and I don't think there's necessarily anything that's good or bad. And that might sound like a cop out, but I really think our programming is to join a team.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you're either a Republican or you're a Democrat, or you're a vaxxer or you're an anti-vaxxer, or you're this or you're that. Mm-hmm. And really, I think everything has good and bad. There's the tale of the Chinese farmer, which is one of my favorite parables. It's the e-bikes bring some good.
Yeah.
And they also bring some drawbacks. So I think with everything, as we increase in our ability to communicate, and, you know, there's these good things about it, and it comes with these bad things.
Right.
And I think that's what I really do like about humans in general is we are very good at reacting to things, and that balance occurs when there is a reaction. So right. I think Burning Man community is going to have a reaction to these things. There's probably going to be some sort of, integration of perspectives. And then we'll see what the outcome is. And that's how things evolve, because there's going to be people that are like, fuck the e-bikes. No way. Let's go back to the way things were. And I've ran into a lot of burners who, they hear my story and they're like, you're not a burner. Yeah. And I went 7 years. And, okay. Yeah. I guess you get to say who is a burner and who's not, but, because their way of experiencing it is this much grittier. You drive in, it's survival of the fittest, it's radical self-reliance, which is one of the, and by no means were any of us that flew in our camp radically self-reliant. Take away our, but also I'm Alaskan, I'm a camper, I'm a hunter, so I could figure it out. My last year I did it a much better way. Yeah,
that's going to be the final act of our conversation. I want to come to that, and I love that, by the way, because you're like, I already have this fucking street cred. Like I already know how to camp in the wilderness and figure it out. So yeah, the conversation of what makes a burner, like that question, was like the driving force of this podcast for the past 10 years. Like that's where it started.
Yeah, I had a experience with a guy. Tony had became friends, I think, in his first few years going before I went with this group called the Danstronauts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
they're from Denver, I think.
Yeah. I think they were like controversial in certain capacities. Yeah. And so he had this spacesuit that he was an honorary Danstronaut. And we went out one night and he was wearing this thing. And somebody came up to him and was like, fuck you, man. You guys ran over my thing. You rolled through my camp and you were loud or something And I didn't know what the guy was talking about because it's my first year. I don't know any of the Burning Man politics or what was going on. But he was yelling at Tony. And so I I was like, I'm going to intervene. So I went up to the guy and I said, hey man, this is my first year at Burning Man and you're really bumming me out by whatever this is. Yeah. And I was told this place was a place of love and acceptance. And the guy was like, I'm sorry, buddy. And he was really drunk, but he immediately got really apologetic and gave me a hug and ended up giving Tony a hug. I was able to diffuse that, but that's kind of my first foray into like Burning Man is a very emotional place.
Yeah.
There's these
it's
peaks,
expressive.
And then you got a lot of people that are on the stuff,
right?
Even
if you weren't, it's desert environment is kicking your ass.
Yeah. It's you're hypercharged out there.
Yeah.
And
no, I like there's like some philosophy YouTuber that I think like said it like it's like it's not a safe space. It's a dangerous space.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
It's so and I appreciate that your argument worked, but I was waiting for that story to end with him telling you to go fuck yourself, and I'm like, yep, that sounds good.
I think he empathized with me, and also Tony was just he's not their camp. He was just wearing their outfit. Yeah. And I think once he realized he wasn't really a danceronaut, and he's just one of their friends, he's not at fault.
Yeah. What how many people would you say you're kind of now like my anthropologist in residence for like the burner, the billionaire class? What, how many people do you think are experiencing Burning Man the way that you guys were? Let's say out of, 70,000 people that are there. What percentage of that do you think is having that experience?
I'm totally guessing and pulling this out of my ass, but I'd say it's growing probably year over year of that class of person going, especially with like Silicon Valley and that. I'd say 15 to 20%.
Wow, that's a lot bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah. There's quite a few camps that are like that. And I think they're getting better at disguising that they're not that type of camp. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah, it's like they had a very specific layout. I would start seeing them like campers all in a group, they create a wall. Yeah. And so they kind of have gotten smarter about how they show up and aren't really a billionaire camp.
Yeah,
but they are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I did have a year. I've camped with a lot of different camps, and I did have a year that after it was done, we looked back and were like, "Oh, I think we were this billionaire camp's beard." Like we were put out front to make it look like we're radically inclusive, but then we were villaged with them, and we. There was all this stuff about the camp layout and like the showers and this and that. And then like until the day that we arrived on Playa, mind you, it was an amazing year. Everything was fine. But like we realized that once we got there, there was strong invisible walls set up between what the access was, what they had and what we had. Yeah. We didn't trip about it. We had an amazing time. But afterwards we looked back and go, oh, I wonder if this is just like a thing that they do. It's like, we're going to put you out front and we're going to village together, but really we're in our own little world.
You know what's fascinating about that? That's, you could say the same exact, most billionaires or very wealthy people, that's their circle of people too. Mm-hmm. You have a Tyler that can diffuse a guy like that. Yeah. You have a friend that, the Tony had in his sphere of friends were people like me and others that could field the incoming, because everybody wanted access to him. Everybody wanted to pitch him. Right. We were so good at recognizing like, oh, this guy's going to try to pitch Tony something. So we would be like, hey man, how's it going? Yeah. Hey. And we would show them the proper, not in a mean way, but we'd show them, hey, he's out here to have a good time and not really to do this thing right now. But if you email this, or here's my cell phone number, get a hold of me. So in the same way as you saw that you were the buffer for the billionaire camp, that's one of the reasons Tony collected people around him. He had people that were really like his pit bulls that would do the really hard stuff. He had people like me who would do the really fun stuff. Yeah. And we like to say, it's like there was a bucket. Like all this stuff goes into the Tyler bucket. All this stuff goes into his other person's bucket. And he had probably 15 to 20 people that would field a ton of the incoming things and filter what really needed to get to him.
That's interesting. Did he, so I'm asking this question about him, but really it's about, I think the reason I'm asking is because it's connected to how human beings in general operate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason I'm interested in this is that, there's, thankfully, a lot of conversation is certainly, finally really like opened up into the public about powerful, wealthy men behaving badly.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, and again, from what I hear from everybody who has known him, he was an example of how not to do that. Like, I guess the question is, did he ask to be challenged? When you spent time with other powerful, wealthy people, did you notice a difference between how they would insulate themselves versus how Tony did? And I wonder if that is connected to why Tony is somebody that I hear spoken of with some reverence rather than many other wealthy, powerful people that I've had a couple of degrees of separation with.
It's a really tough and complicated question because there, as much as there was really good things about Tony, there was some dark stuff too, and it's like we all have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, and his story to me is a human story. It's so human at its very core. Nobody's perfect, but you have, again, this person that does a lot of good, but there's this piece of them that also is, whether it's creating diversion or distraction from the things maybe they don't want you to know, or the demons that they do have that they're fighting. With him, I think he was just such an honest individual. It was really hard to fault him in those regards. When it came to, he's just like, here's the honest truth. The things that got really strange were when there was somebody kind of trying to protect him, which we'd find ourselves doing a lot, We'd find, I call it king culture. Like, everybody wants a king. And that's actually a Bible story too. Like, they wanted a king and God said, no, you don't need one. You got me. And they're like, no, we want a king.
Yeah.
We kind of want to have a person in charge, but naturally that person is going to be full of flaws. And that is a flaw of our systemic thinking as human beings. We put somebody in charge. It's like, you're in charge. Tell us what to do. That is a human being that's got, and especially when you give them power, and especially when you give them unlimited resources.
I think even the argument could be made that even their attraction to power is probably already a symptom of their other darker parts that we haven't dealt with.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And I appreciate you bringing up the Bible story, because that is exactly where I was going to go about your experience with all these things.
Yeah.
And I remember some presidential historian I was watching was describing how, and I remember this exact way that he said it. He's like, literally 100% of the United States presidents that we've had have been sociopaths. He's like, certainly we've got like an Obama who's like higher in like the empathy quotient, right? But just even being attracted to that level of power in and itself means that by definition you've got some demons.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I think that the system breeds that. We have a system that wants you to join teams. It wants you to compete for, the best grade, to get the right recommendations, to get scholarships, to compete in sports, to be the best, to get famous. It's like every kid wants to be a YouTuber now, a social media influencer. You could not. You couldn't pay me to do that. It's like we come from a generation that's like, what? No, maybe some people want that, but we breed the very thing that ends up corrupting the nature of what we're meant to be. And I watched, I think the story of Tony and Burning Man and my experience just from my purview around him was, it's like the giving tree. It's like pieces and pieces and pieces of him were just to where he would get kind of bored of the situation and he would try to kind of escape it, maybe get captured again in some capacity. And Burning Man, I would say just being his friend and being around him for about 6 solid years with him almost every day, it's like where he could be a kid again.
Yeah.
I just saw it in him. He gets on his bike. He's with his friends. He's riding around. He'd get like literally like a kid about stuff, where he's like, oh my gosh, the speakeasy. Did you see this? And then he'd solve it for everybody so that we didn't have to solve the puzzles. And, he would like, let's climb on this thing or let's do that. Or what's this over here? And I just realized ultimately, I think he really wanted to just be a kid again and not have all of this pressure and these constraints. And Burning Man was like the one place where he could go out there and do that. And unfortunately, there's this other piece attached to it, which is there is drugs out there. There are things that when you're messing with those things, I tell people you're playing with fire, And with an intellect like Tony's, those things over time took such a toll on him from a mental, emotional, physical capacity that the last few years it was like creeping up this like break that was like looming, because you'd start to see the signs each year of his addictions and the things that were creeping up.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And in our unofficial pre-interview for this, like you talked about that you felt ketamine specifically is the one that you've seen do the most damage, and you're also, I think you were saying you were camped with Elon, like with Elon Musk.
We weren't with Elon, but
next to him.
Yeah, there's like a camps backed up.
Right. Did you spend any time with him? Okay. But he was like another person we've watched from a distance have possibly that trajectory. We don't know him personally. Our mutual friend, there's no shortage of stories. I've been hearing it.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of get your perspective on what's happening there. Like expand on everything you were just describing about how that affects people with pressure and power and money and intellect.
So I'll go into how we first discovered ketamine, and I think Tony knew what it was prior to me. But we came back into camp, and we went into his trailer, and there were some friends of his in the trailer, and one of them was like passed out, like in the K-hole, I guess you could say. And I didn't know what it was. I thought she was drunk or something, and the other person, she said, hey, it's ketamine. And she said, it's non-addictive, makes you feel like you've got, you get a little drunk. You can't OD on it. It eliminates pain. It eliminates emotional pain. She's kind of sold it as like, whoa, this is the holy grail.
Yeah. Sounds amazing.
Yeah. So we tried it. And we got a little, like, it felt like I got drunk a little bit. And then, we went about our main thing is we would do like mushrooms, and we would drink alcohol. We drink Fernet throughout the day and the night, and
Fernet
Branca.
Okay.
Oh, it's disgusting. I like it, but most people hate it.
All right. Fernet
And
mushrooms.
so that was kind of that was primarily what we did. And so anyway,
see, here I was thinking billionaire entry is going to be like a menu of amazing drugs, but
yeah, I mean, stuff was available, and I wasn't with him 24/7, but like I don't react really well to MDMA. It makes me sick to my stomach. alcohol is my thing, and I really enjoy psilocybin.
Right.
Those two things, or a combination of those two things, I love it. And so when we discovered that, Tony was kind of going through a breakup, and he wanted to experiment more with it. So he started bringing it more in, and he started doing a lot. And it sent him into a drug-induced psychosis and a psychotic break. And if you put me on a witness stand and told me and said, hey, if you could say one thing that led to Tony Hsieh's death, what would it be? And I would say ketamine, 100%, because I had been with him for 6 years in certain capacities of him acting a certain way. And as soon as he went too far with ketamine, it broke him. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. It's like he went into a completely different realm of how he would speak, how he would act, how he would do business deals. So he went from manic. What I worry about when I look at Elon from afar, is Tony had a lot of wins in his life, right? He had. And this is just my perspective. This is Tyler's perspective.
This is opinion and editorial. Yeah. We say it in the beginning of the podcast, by the way. This is all just fucking opinions.
This is my opinion. He had mostly had wins. He was in Zappos, a Link Exchange, then Venture Frogs, then Zappos, then he had Delivering Happiness. So he had most things going really, really well for him. And then Downtown Project was kind of that first thing where the news sent out this article. There's a bloodletting. There's tons of layoffs. There was some suicides that had happened because of the stress around, all of those startups and coming to Vegas, and those got blamed on him, which I think is unfair.
Yeah. The Downtown Project, real quick in one sentence, what was it?
It was the company that he did all of his downtown investing through. His $350 million into like downtown.
He made like small community housing businesses.
They bought
revitalizing downtown.
Yeah, a lot of like the Container Park, Ferguson's Downtown Project is like the holding company and the operator of all of that. Okay. And I think at its peak it had like 700 employees, or it could be more.
Wow.
Anyway, long story short, that kind of went badly. Then when he tried to roll out Holacracy at Zappos, that kind of went badly. And the press had kind of turned on Tony, right? And he was no longer the darling child of the internet. There was a lot of people in Zappos questioning him, pushing back on his leadership and his decisions. Wow. And I started kind of seeing him turning to substances as like a relief valve for all of that. Because it's an immense amount of pressure, and I don't care. People can go, "Oh, it must be hard being a billionaire." Yeah. I mean, imagine being everybody. You don't know anybody in your sphere that doesn't need something from you or get their money from you, or you're responsible. Your decisions are responsible for them. Having be able to feed their family. And then all of the, it's, I don't know. I would never want that position. Yeah. Because that position that he was in, over time, he started turning to these other things. And I think I see a very similar thing happening. I mean, look at Kanye West, right?
Sure.
And look at Elon. Things have been going, Elon's been winning. Yeah. Winning. What I was nervous about is I'm like, hey, if Trump doesn't win, right, what happens? He hasn't had the experience of getting shut down, right, a company going completely bankrupt or belly up or these things. His will and his ability to drive business success has gotten him above the line of accountability for a long time. And when you mix in these things like ketamine or alcohol or any of these things, it's playing with fire, especially with an intellect like that. Yeah. And he in the end, Tony was a completely different person. The ketamine had cracked open a place that I maybe saw hints of, where in meetings, Tony was very quiet. He would usually kind of wait, and then he would say something or maybe make a suggestion, but he wasn't confrontational. On ketamine, I mean, he would scream at you, and he would, to the point of like frothing at the mouth, like he was out of his mind. And that's the danger of playing around with these things. And look, this is the Burning Man community, right? That's listening to this, and we all can know. I think we all know people that have taken these things too far, and we've lost people along the journey. I've lost 4 friends now. I lost Tony, Josh Levine, my buddy Sean drank himself to death. Alcohol, just drank himself to death in his apartment.
Yeah.
And it's just, it makes me sad that like the medicine is these things. And the last year I did Burning Man, I did it 100% sober.
Yeah.
I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't take any substances. I drank coffee.
Yeah.
And I allowed myself to dance and to play and to prank and to wake up early and to stay up all night and to watch the sunrise. And I went to the temple and I cried my eyes out, and I banged my fists and I let all my emotions, and I left everything out on the table. It's a year it rained too, which I loved that. It makes me sad that so often we need to take something to allow that thing to come out. And I really think that's what it is our sober self is boxed up.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if I just had this drink, I could then work this room a little bit better.
Yeah. It's lubricant.
And I get it. I really do.
I think, again, to opinion.
Yeah.
In my personal experience, we all are having various levels of the human experience that we are processing, and it has ups and it has downs. And I think what happens is that with substances, I think it's the reason in my experience, I've never seen a substance that has not become problematic for somebody at some point.
Yeah.
By the way, and let me clarify that. I'm not saying that all substances are problematic. I'm saying I don't think there is, in my personal observation, a hierarchy of which one is more problematic necessarily. I think there's a general scientific, like we've done enough research to know, for example, meth is going to be generally worse, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol.
Never tried it.
Sure.
But I know I'd probably like it.
Yeah.
Which is why,
like we've done enough. We've done enough research.
That question of what would you have for your last meal?
Meth?
No, I would try black tar heroin.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Hey man, like
totally.
I'm sure the reason it's so addicting is because it's probably amazing. So if I'm on my way out, can I just try that?
Yeah.
One thing?
No, I've interviewed. I've not done black tar heroin. I've interviewed.
I think that's the pinnacle.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate.
It's up there because it's prior to this show when I was co-hosting a hip hop underground podcast. We interviewed Kayla Carrera. She's a pretty big porn star at that time, and she was describing her and her partner when they were going through their heroin addiction, and the long and short of the way it was described to me is that it's the blissful feeling you get from a post orgasm or like during like that up, like it's about to happen, but it's like that for hours. And you're just like, you're laying around at that level of bliss and you're just like, and of course, I'm sure there's listeners listening who've had experiences who would disagree. This is the way it was described to me. So I understand how it can become so severely addicting.
Yeah.
Right. So like with ketamine, for example, it is, the dissociative. I think back to like what I was observing about like the addiction process, we are all having experiences. Pressure is building up. Mm-hmm. It's happening, let's say at work, it's happening with your family, like whatever it is. And we human bodies, we need to process it. We consume an experience, our body processes it, and then we have to express it. And that, expression with food is you take a shit. Yeah. Right. But like with emotions and feelings, it goes through you and it has to come out some other way. Like you don't get to skip the sad part. You don't get to skip the depression. There is no way to bypass it. And what happens with substances when people get into these problematic states is that I think like with Tony, like for example, the way you're describing it, probably what we think might be happening with Elon, there's all this pressure. They're finding ways to bypass the experience with substances. And so that pressure is building up. And because it has not expressed itself, it is now expressing itself in toxic ways.
Yeah.
So there is no way to do it. Like, for example, like if you're going to have a drink, if you're going to get high, I know like whenever I'm doing anything like that, I go into it knowing that this is not going to solve, like I'm going to come out of it the other end.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to need to process, for example, my dad's death. Yeah. Right. Like I don't get to just go get high or get drunk and not have to deal with that. All I'm doing is delaying it. The debt collector will come back. Yeah. And I think with these situations, like with alcohol, there's more research where we can say like point to it. Or with cocaine, for example, there's more research already done on it because we can point to it and say, all right, you've got a dopamine deficiency and like you're going to have to come back from this. You got to take, X amount of days off, even caffeine, for example, like take 30 days off everything. Yeah. But you got to feel that shit. Yeah. And if you are a sensitive soul, and it's hard for a lot of us to believe, I think, that like, because we look at these powerful billionaires and we're like, fuck that. He's got everything in the world. But like, no, he's still a sensitive soul. Like you're describing, he was becoming a child on playa. And like that kid, that's the little kid from what I'm hearing from you. Like that's the little kid that was not getting the support and love and hugs that he needed. Yeah. And so he's using this other thing and it's building up and it is expressing itself in him screaming at people and frothing at the mouth. And there's no way to bypass that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a fucking annoying part of being human.
Yeah. We all have to deal with our stuff. Yeah. And, in my experience, and I had to force myself that last year to tap into those emotions like completely sober, because it is easier, and the way Tony used to explain things like drugs is like, well, you could walk over there or you could get in a truck and drive over there. It's a tool. It's just a tool to get you, and alcohol was always talked about as it's a social lubricant. It helps people be more honest, be more open. And but like a video game, if I put the 99 lives in, the cheat code, I can beat it. Yeah. But man, it felt so good for me to beat Contra legitly. Yeah. It just had a lot more that feeling of accomplishment and how hard I had to work at it to get that achievement. The cheat codes always come at a cost. Jewel, who was a close friend of Tony, she talks about this. There's the encumbered path and there's the unencumbered path. You could get that orgasmic feeling from black tar heroin, or you could find somebody and connect with them and, make love to them and have that climax in that way too, and nurture relationship. And you can work out and you can meditate and you can get out in nature and you can cold plunge. And I see that there's this movement of people getting those longer lasting highs, and that's the unencumbered path. So one way you're getting to those forms of ecstasis, I get there through music. I have musical orgasms all the time, where you just lock in and that feeling of, oh, I'm here. And usually to get there though, it's my gear's not working and my guitar's out of tune and my drums I got to do. And so there's always this, hard thing you kind of have to go through to get to that space of lock in. And taking ketamine, yeah, it gets there really quick. Mm-hmm. But man, you lost something by taking the easy path. And in my biblical upbringing, they call that the straight and narrow path. There's the harder pathway that not a lot of people take to get to places, and then there's what everybody else does because it's easy.
No, can I also just say Jewel is a treasure?
Yeah, she's amazing.
And I always say it's like one of, I think, 3 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience that I've listened to all the way from beginning to end.
It's hard to get through 3 hours.
Yeah, no, I don't have the patience. But with the Jewel, the one with Jewel, oh my God, that's a really good one.
Her story is amazing, and just she figured these things out on her own.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have this person who, it's like, wait, are you a psychologist?
Yeah.
No, she just became the watcher of herself, and she figured out ways to deal with her trauma, and she actually, when things were going really badly with Tony, he had walled himself off in Park City. He had none of his friends could really get to him at the time. Jewel went and visited him, and she tried to tell everybody the encumbered and the unencumbered path. And she confronted Tony, and she wrote him this amazing letter. You can find it. Anybody can search for Jewel Tony Hsieh letter. Wow. And she writes him this letter that's basically just like, hey, Tony, you're lost out there in the ether, and nobody around you is going to check you because they're all taking things from you. They're all taking money from you. She's like, she gives him a warning, like, you are going to die if you don't lock in and come back. And, you look at going back to these billionaire stuff, I look at human consciousness as like, almost like a physical, a mental visualization of the earth. The earth has a density to it that has gravity. Yeah. Human consciousness, while 99.99% of us have to wake up every day, have to figure out how to put food on the table, have to figure out how to pay our bills. Billionaires, Tony, when he was in his 20s, never had to work a day in his life again. He sold Link Exchange for, $200 million. I'm getting that number wrong, but it's close to that, right? As a 20-year-old that gets that kind of money, that never has to work again, they untether from the rest of human consciousness. There's this thing called spiral dynamics where it's like, and they get lost in the ether. And we make up a name for that. We call it eccentric. Billionaires, or, they're crazy. Yeah. Listen to what they say. But they're operating in a different reality than the rest of human consciousness is. And so in spiral dynamics, human consciousness will say, that's crazy, that's eccentric. And they'll look at the rest and go, yeah, but they're, they just don't understand. They don't get what I see. Yeah. They don't understand what I see. I see this globalistic view. I see all of this other stuff. And that's where the Elons, the Tonys get to. And unless you're also there, you can't, you have a hard time empathizing with it, but they lose their gravity. Yeah. And then they're spiraling out there with no tether to reality. I luckily have my wife that I come home to. Yeah. And I dump Burning Man on her, and she goes, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. The backyard needs to get mowed,
Yes.
I'm like, I just, and I usually take her on a date and just dump all of Burning Man onto her, and then she lets me know I need to take out the trash.
Oh my God, that's so fucking good. Because that's the solution, right? Like, I mean, the closest thing to a solution. That's human. It's deep human connections. And if, like, you're right, if we're like spiraled out, Alan Watts, I remember, described this at one point in one of his talks about how when, like, the Eastern mind explores the psychedelic realm, they get an understanding of, like, the oneness of consciousness. They're more likely to. They said that when the Western mind does it, it is more likely, like, the Eastern mind will say we are God, and the Western mind will more likely to start to believe I am God. I have created all of this.
Why?
it's the individualist, perhaps. Like the
Yeah.
Western mind is more individualistic, and the Eastern mind is more collectivist.
I see. Okay.
And of course, we're dramatically generalizing here, but there is that sense, like what you're describing. Like we're looking at like Elon, for example, and Elon is another stand-in for a lot of like Silicon Valley, the emerging oligarchy, if you will.
Yeah. He's in the front of it for sure.
Yeah.
He's at the top.
They believe they can see an angle on all this that the rest of us can't, and I do believe that they believe that they're doing the right thing according to their perspective of what reality is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's rare for people to believe that they are the villain in the story. I think for the most part, if you're in a human body, you believe that you're the hero. And unless you have people around you to check you when your head is up your ass, like Kanye, when he first started to act out, I would look at him and go, what I feel like I'm looking at, like it was on TMZ, and I remember like there's the video clip that went viral with him saying slavery is a choice, and I'm hearing, I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, I get what he's getting at, because what he's getting at is something incredibly fucking abstract, and it is far away from human experience that most of the rest of us are having. And I was looking at him and like, I feel like this is somebody who has done a fuck ton of DMT, and then like nobody told them it's time to take out the trash on Monday morning.
Yeah. He lost all those people.
Right.
His mom died,
Yeah.
Those are key anchor points, and
Yeah.
Tony's family, they were trying to get in, they would try to spend time, and but he would hold them at arm's length, because they weren't 100% approving of the lifestyle and the things that he was doing. My wife, she told me I wasn't the same person for 3 days after I would do ketamine.
Really?
She'd say, hey, there's something different about you. Like, you're not the same person. You're not the same Tyler that I know. And so when I stopped, she's like, hey, this isn't good, and I'm grateful that I've always had her, and I listened to her. She knows me better than anybody. We started dating when we were 14, and we've been married now 20 years. We've been together 27 years. Yeah. She knows who I am, and she will check me. And I often think about, if I didn't have her, holy shit. Yeah. Like, who would I be? Who would I be? And or who would I be if I lost her? And I have a lot of empathy, when people lose people, like, you just lost your dad. Like, that's huge. That's a huge tether point, an anchor point for anybody. And, those are times where I both mourn for somebody, but I also get excited for people, because I know on the other side of loss, when you get through it all, like, you step into something new and you grow. The loss of Tony in my life, God, that was hard. Yeah. But I feel like I'm so much better, for having him in my life the time that I did, and for him showing me the cost. Like, I had a front row seat to seeing, I'm 10 years younger than him. I had a front row seat to seeing the cost of what substance abuse can cause. Wow. And I was on a very similar path, and it woke me up, to that. I now know exactly what happens when you do these things. And I tell all my friends, that are, whether they're experimenting with things, I'm like, hey, look, be careful. Yeah. You're an adult, and I respect you, and I'm here to support you. But at the end of the day, be very careful, because these are ways in which this can go. Yeah. If you don't balance it.
I mean, that's the perfect transition to our final act here. What made you decide to go back to Burning Man? Like, tell me, like, Tony dies. What happens in that process? When did you make the decision?
I wanted to go back and do the temple, and I wanted to do it sober. I actually went.
What inspired that idea?
I had a bunch of stuff that, I was closing a chapter. I believe that was my last Burning Man. That was year 7, number of completion. Yeah. I wanted to go back. I wanted to do it completely sober, because I had faced my my issue, which was alcohol. During COVID, the loss of Tony, all that stuff I was checking out really bad with, and my drinking got out of control. And I was 7 months sober. So I had hit 7 months of sobriety, and I wanted to do Burning Man, totally sober. And I wanted to do the temple because we had never gotten to do that. And I built a really nice thing for him in the temple. But also there was some stuff in there that was, some of my anger that I carried towards how it all went down at the end. And just it just felt like a really great closure to a chapter in my life. I've got a baby girl on the way now. My wife's 8 months pregnant. I now work for the city of Las Vegas as a development officer, so I'm in the public sector now. I couldn't have picked a more opposite job than Zappos with running with Tony.
That was your gateway drug into a day job.
Yeah, exactly. And I just really, I wanted to go and prove to myself that I could be there and really tap into what Burning Man is and was. And I had my best year ever. It's the year that it rained.
Mudman was your last one.
Mudman was my last one. Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about what it was like to come into the city now as a civilian. what that year was like.
Yeah, setting up, I burying our power cables and helping people with their trailer. I really just leaned into, I've got a wider range of MacGyver type skills in electrical work and production and audio. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in anything, but I know a lot about a lot of things. And so I kind of just became, a co-dad with this guy, Keith, in the Prodigal Swans, where, if anything was going bad in somebody's trailer, I would help them out. And when mud happened, I got in our 4x4 truck and pulled probably 50 people out of the mud, just running around, helping people make sure they had what they needed. I mean, some people were in some really bad situations, dropping off water to people and helping set up the camp, set the tents up, clean and cook. I went around with a lot of people one-on-one. I had the pleasure of showing some people around their first day that they'd ever been to Burning Man and showing them the ropes. And I spent a lot of time in the temple just building my thing for Tony and really absorbing that part of Burning Man. And had races on my bike with my friends and it was an amazing time. And, cried a lot. And I think that was really healing for me to kind of release a lot of that stuff that I was carrying about how things happened and how everything kind of came crumbling down at the end with Zappos and Tony. And I went to my first AA meeting at
oh, no way.
Well, I've never been, and I don't really feel like I need AA.
But you did that on playa?
No, somebody else. I met a bunch of sober people that were like, "Oh, you're sober? Oh my gosh!" And so they're like, "We have AA, like an AA camp." And so went to the AA camp, and that's my first and only AA meeting I've ever been in. But I'm like, this is cool. There's like a whole camp that's all sober, and it was a lot of fun. And I felt like I wouldn't say I won't go back, but I think, I've always wanted to take my wife. She's not interested at all. But I've really wanted to just take her to show her.
Your kid will be.
Yeah. Maybe I'll take Harper. Yeah, I'll take my daughter when she's old enough. I loved seeing families out there, like families with kids, and, they're running around. And, it felt like a good closing chapter. And, I will say this, the temple part of Burning Man is so much more powerful than the man part. It unlocked to me like, oh, there's this other level of this thing than just coming here to consume and play. And I think that that's actually the secret in life too. Nothing makes this the most selfish thing you can do in life, I think, is give back. Is it's the thing that feeds you the most nourishing spiritual food. You know, like this Inspiring Children we started with there.
Yeah.
Every time I mentor any of those young people or I give to their foundation, oh my gosh, it feels so good. And I want to share that with everybody. Like, you know what feels the best?
Yeah.
Is when you do these things, when you put something into the temple, you build something super beautiful and you burn it and you release it. There's, I don't know, I'm not very good with my words, but there's this, that's the next level of evolution of, in the fact that for 6 years I never experienced that. I'm like, man, Tony, you missed the biggest part. And I think he had maybe done the temple in previous years and just avoided it after that, but we never did it together. So
that actually was going to be the question I was going to ask, is how, if you could go back in time, what would be the thing you would tell you and Tony in previous years? And it would be to go to the temple, it sounds like.
Yeah. I would spend more time in the temple, and I would definitely do it differently. I think going and doing an installation would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, we've talked about that quite a bit on this show. The experience of being up at 3 a.m. building a cage around an art project because your budget is run out. Like there's, those limitations are where some of the most powerful growth and bonding and amazing experiences happens. And, when it's easy to throw money at a problem. And by the way, I don't know how I would go about not doing that. Like, I don't know if I had unlimited access to money. I don't know how I'd go about not tapping into it to make my life easier.
I have a huge amount of respect when I see somebody who does have that type of resource and they haven't allowed it to become a cheat code for them. Because that's, okay.
How do you do that?
Think about Elon, right?
Yeah.
Elon's really good at framing something in, I'm doing this for the greater good. I'm protecting free speech. Actually, somebody started shadow banning you on Twitter and you got mad and it's you like using it. So you used your resource to buy your toy because somebody else was playing with the toy in your toy box. So there's just two ways to look at it, right? Like, and I would watch Tony do these types of things too, where it's like he was really good at framing something up to be the bigger, better purpose. But underlying it is this other thing of like, Tony wanted to have Burning Man all the time. So Maston, we're going to revitalize a blighted area of downtown Las Vegas, is this other thing where he wants to walk around where there's Burning Man art cars and there's festivals and there's music and his friends are around. And so I think you got to look at very, very, very few people actually do things just because it's the right thing to do. And it's like when I find people like that they don't think anybody's watching and they're passing out bottles of water to the homeless and they're driving around and giving them prepared meals and they're not looking for anybody to notice and they're not looking for anybody to see. Most of those people go through life never being discovered because they're doing what they say in the Bible. They're storing up their riches in another place. It's not about what you accomplish here. It's when Jesus Christ says, when I didn't know you, when I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me water? When I was in jail, did you visit me? What you've done to the least of these, you've also done to God. And that to me is the real stuff. And those people don't get the accolades. They don't. And maybe some of them get recognized and seen. Like you see some of them, like, remember when Keanu Reeves got his day? Like he's just been the sweetest guy forever and ever and ever and ever. And then all of a sudden the whole world's like, this guy is so nice and like treats women respectfully and gives his money away. And so maybe, that's what it means when the meek will inherit the earth at some point. But yeah.
Fuck. That is what we're gonna close on, because I gotta do some processing of that, because I'm trying to figure that out. I'm like, yeah, underneath everything I do, there is I was wronged in this particular way, so I'm gonna use that as inspiration to contribute something into the world, so that ideally the person after me is not feeling wronged in the same way. But is that connected to a level of ego and narcissism? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how to think differently, like how to do it differently. I feel like every heartbreak is like what gives me the fire under my ass to do the next thing. But does that mean don't do the next thing? It's such a paradox.
No, I think that you have to have ego. I hear this thing, the ego death, right? I think that you have to have ego, or else you wouldn't get up or brush your teeth, or
right.
like.
It's motivation.
Yeah, ego is motivation, but there's like the loving side of ambition, and there's the fearful side of ambition. And that's the lens I always try to look at now. And it's actually something that I feel like I figured out at Burning Man is, because I come up like in Christianity, which is using language like God, Satan, angel, demons. But then I started seeing oh, love. God is love, right?
Yeah.
Satan, fear.
Yeah.
So really there's fear and there's love are the two sources at which you can make decisions from,
it's from where you
and
draw
pull from.
Yeah.
So you can say, oh man, something harmed me, and I want to make sure that thing doesn't harm other people.
Yeah.
Man, that's you doing something from a place of love. Or you can do it from a place of fear too. It's like one of my favorite examples of that is you can work out from a place of love because you want your body to have feel good, show up for vitality for the people that are around you, have that strength to use it for good. Or you could be like, I want to look good at the beach. Right. I don't like my body. I'm fearful of how people will look at me if I take my shirt off, or this or that. So you can do something from a place of love or from a place of fear. It's just how you shift your mindset into it. So what happens to us is a motivator, and I think it's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
And then it's just your choice whether you respond to it and move forward in a place of love, or you respond to it and move forward in a place of fear.
Yeah. I'm going to thank you. That's powerful. I want to close this out with how has that affected you and your direction? What clarity did you come to move from a place of love in the next step in your life and in your career and what you're doing in Vegas and what you're doing with your music and your art?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I find myself in fear-based decision-making all the time. And I work on it every day, and but the good thing is I notice it when I'm doing it more now. And I try to go, have that little internal conversation, Tyler, shift your mindset to this. I really want to, if there's anything that I want to accomplish in life, it's just being the best version of Tyler.
Yeah.
And knowing that when I focus on that, I naturally show up in every other capacity better, whether that's building community or working at the city or being a husband, now soon to be a father. Mm-hmm. Just when I'm in a proper relationship of love with myself and with God, I feel like I'm just naturally express that outward.
Yeah.
When I get distracted from that, I naturally move into the other realm, and then I catch myself there. I know, okay, I need to get back into this.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
That's it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Work on it every day.
Yeah.
And part of loving yourself is just also understanding like we're imperfect.
Yeah.
And imperfection shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, man. That's a lot to process. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and candidness. And this is definitely up there as like one of my favorite interviews, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
You did not disappoint. I think we should take out the episode with your music, like some of your music.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just it's probably playing in the background right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're gonna send me some stuff, and I'm gonna put it on. And when this episode goes live, will hear some of your music playing out the show.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Sounds good.
I got the perfect song.
Perfect. What are we hearing right now then?
It would be Sinister
Okay.
by Theory of Flight.
All right. What's it about?
Vegas.
All right. Perfect. You're now listening to Tyler's band, Theory of Flight. This whole album is on Spotify. Funny enough, I met Tyler through my brother. They met on LinkedIn, of all places. And then Tyler and I started emailing over the past year, and then here we are. So I guess this episode's contributing producer is my brother, Shahryar. That's so fucking weird. Listen, my brother's an amazing human being, and he's a great dad. He's an amazing big brother. He's the executive director of the Autism Society of San Diego, and he is so hilariously, completely, absolutely the furthest thing from a burner. Perhaps you have siblings, and you love today's episode. Share it with them. Just shoot them over a text with this episode link and say, hey, Fartface. Burner Podcast is like the longest running traditional audio format podcast in the global Burning Man community, and it's among the top 5% of podcasts worldwide. Listen to this episode, or I'll tell mom where you hit the pornos. Burner Podcast is produced by a evolving team of amazing folks based in various cities. All of the links and stuff from today's show can be found in the show notes and /or over at burnerpodcast.com. The intro music you heard is America's Horse with No Name remix and is produced by Joe Man out of Austin, Texas. As always, if you've got a topic you'd love to hear about on the show or guests in your own neck of the woods that you want to pitch, hit us up. I'd love to hear them. Slide into my DMs over at Burner Podcast. That's Burner Podcast, one word, no spaces, over on Instagram. New episodes are typically up at the end of the month, but, it's on Burner time. To keep the seat warm between full episodes, we do drop random segments like Burner Podcast Presents The Dispatch, 15-minute-ish raw, unedited calls, and Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline, DJ sets recorded at Burns. Anyway, till next time, love, light, and other crap. Take it away, Theory of Flight.
I'm afraid this
There's not a dry soul, a Midwestern downpour. A phone call to friends, seems this heartbreak has no end. This world's a cold place for such a young face. It's tonight we start over, tonight we begin to let it in, let it in, and we'll burn on and burst into a million new ways, where the air again find once again there's the blood flowing through the veins. Let these red eyes explode into a brilliant display, where the air again are broken and the innocents find their fame. Yeah! Oh, broken one, why are you still so undone? You are the new sound, creation cries out. You're bursting through the birth of something new. The world's a stage for what your dreams are made for. It's tonight we start over, tonight we begin to let it in, let it in, and we'll burn on and burst into a million new ways, where the air again find once again there's the blood flowing through the veins. Let these red eyes explode into a brilliant display, where the air again are broken and the innocents let it start today. When the colors collide without the rain, let it start tonight. When you and I align without a fade, let it start today.
burnerpodcast.com.